Hi, I'm Lisa Marie Latino, sitting in for Steve Adubato, and this is One-on-One's Career Week. Today I'm joined by Steve Kornacki, political columnist for the New York Observer. Steve, how are you?
I'm great. It's good to be here.
So you are a Boston boy.
That's right. I try not to admit that.
A
around
Red Sox fan.
Yeah.
We don't like them around here. I'm just kidding. And how did you get to New York? How did a Boston boy get to New York?
It was a kind of strange path, I guess, actually.
Explain it.
Well, I graduated school in 2001, and
Which school?
Boston University.
Okay.
The Boston connection there, and I went to. I was kind of unclear what I wanted to do, so a few of my friends were going to Los Angeles after school to try to do like film and television and that kind of thing. So I went out there with them with no expectations and just failed miserably. And we had some good stories to tell from the trip, but not much from a career standpoint came from it. But I'd always been interested in politics.
Did you write politics in school?
Yeah, a little. I mean, I was more on the other side. I worked on campaigns in college.
Which campaigns?
Well, there was a congressional campaign in Boston in 1998.
Wow.
It was when Joe Kennedy, the son of Robert Kennedy, left Congress, and suddenly there was this 10-way race to succeed him. So I got involved in that campaign when I was there. So I'd always been more on that side than anything else, but I'd always been interested in the process. And so when I came back from LA, I was kind of thinking in terms of maybe, I hadn't been a journalism major or anything in school, but I was thinking in terms of trying to do something like that. And then there was an opportunity I found on the career website from my school for a political website in New Jersey.
What's the website?
It's called politicsnj.com.
Okay.
Now it's called politicernj.com. It's an interesting story. The long and short of it was an anonymously owned website that specialized in New Jersey politics, and it had developed a real following because it had this great inside information that you couldn't get anywhere else, real accurate, dead-on information, and nobody knew who the editor was. So the editor wanted somebody to sort of be the legitimate face of it and to go out and do some more sort of, conventional writing and that sort of thing. So it hired me, and I spent a couple years in New Jersey just living in my car, traveling up and down the turnpike in the Parkway.
Car?
More or less, yeah. Not literally, yeah. You think for an anonymous website. I should clarify, I did have an apartment, but I felt like I was living in my car sometimes. But, I really learned politics. I really learned politics, covering state politics, especially a state like New Jersey. And I wasn't covering it out of the State House. I was covering the local food fights and getting to know, the different party leaders throughout the state.
And you just worked your way up, and now you're covering presidential election stuff.
Yeah, well, I went from the website to for a year I covered Congress for Roll Call, which is this sort of insider newspaper on Capitol Hill. That was a much more traditional, conventional reporting job, which was good and bad for different reasons, but it helped me sort out what I was good and what I wasn't good at. And then I had this opportunity with the New York Observer. And the funny thing was, while I was at the Observer, that the newspaper actually bought the website that I used to work for in New Jersey. Yeah. And it's now part of the Observer's sort of media empire, if you will.
Okay, so before you talked about what you're good at, what you're not good at, and the process. So explain the process of what it takes to be a political reporter.
Well, it's a broad term, political report. At this point, there's a big difference between doing what I do right now and even what I did when I was in New Jersey and the traditional reporting that I did when I was in Washington. To be a political reporter, it's very important that you develop, a fairly close and not acrimonious relationship with campaign staffs. Well, I'm not good at it. That's why I don't do it anymore.
Well, because you always read newspapers or magazines, and they have these sources,
right? These
close-linked sources, and I always wondered how they get those sources. How do you get such close proximity to Barack Obama or John McCain?
Yeah, there's a small universe. Generally, it's a fun game sometimes when you start reading, when you know who the reporter is and you know kind of generally who they talk to. I learned this on Capitol Hill. You can sort of start guessing, like, when you see a well-placed source in the newspaper, you can narrow it down generally to, well, it was either this person or this person or that person, and you kind of know there's a very small universe of who these people are, top-level aides. Sometimes it's even, I found this when I was at Roll Call covering Congress, sometimes it would be the politician himself or herself, and it might be sourced as something like, someone familiar with the congressman's thinking. So that would be a good way to say it was the congressman.
So you said that that's not something you're particularly good at. How are you working at that to get better?
Well, I'm not good at the part where, when I covered Congress day to day, the important thing was, I covered the Democrats in Congress. So the important thing for me was to maintain a good relationship with the offices of, like, at the time, the minority leader, the minority whip. They were in the minority back then when I was down there. I wasn't good at that, because if you maintain a good relationship with them, there's a lot of stuff you can't say. You have to throw them a bone every now and then. They're going to try to they're trying to spin you constantly. You have to be receptive to it. You have to listen to it. I'm a little too argumentative, skeptical, cynical, and more interested in sort of throwing elbows a little bit, playing in traffic, I guess. So I was not a good match for that position.
Well, besides your writing, you also do a lot of TV. You do a lot of radio. So explain how you parlayed your journalist career into a broadcasting career.
Well, it's I wouldn't call it a career at this point. I haven't been paid too much for it yet, but I take the chances I get. I mean, I had an opportunity when I was in New Jersey for those 3 years. We sort of partnered up with a show on a different channel that covered politics. So I was doing some sort of on that show every week, doing sort of commentary, interviewing people, that sort of thing. And then just when you write, especially for the Observer, I find I write about national politics. I write about the presidential race, congressional races, things like that. So the stories, the way the web works, it's great. I write for a New York-based newspaper, but it can get picked up very easily and go all around the web. And when it goes all around the web, people from media outlets all over the country read it.
So the internet has changed the entire profession.
Sure. I can't imagine doing what I do now 15 years ago. Because back then, I would write something. Well, first of all, half of my stuff is web only, so there would have been no job for me. But back then, you put it in the newspaper, and unless somebody has a physical copy of the newspaper in front of them, they have no idea. It's a tree falling in the woods with no one there.
Now, I mean, I'm young. You look very young too. How old are you?
Well, I'm 28.
You're 28 years old, and you're so successful already. So you're an inspiration to all us young people around there.
You haven't seen my credit card bills. So,
well, that's because you were living in your car for a long time.
Well, no, I would have saved money by living in my car, as it turns out.
That's true. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. I learned so much about the world of journalism. And Career Week will be back right after this. Steve will be out here with one of the bravest guests we've had on Career Week, Joseph Verderosa, because while you're running out of a burning building, he's going in. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.